When considering the possibility of trading Tyler Stephenson, it's not just one thing that is leading us to believe it's likely. There's multiple things.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Reds podcast. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in all the land. Thank you for helping getting us there. As always, we are your team every day. My name's Stephen Offenbaker. His name's Jeff Carr. We are lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans. We love the Reds. We love baseball. We love talking about the Reds, and we love talking about baseball so much, in fact, that we are going on our combined 16th season talking about your Cincinnati Reds in podcast form. On today's podcast, a little bit later, we are going to talk about the forgotten man, the one-man bumper car hype train that is Jeff Carr's fandom of Will Benson will be answered because everybody seems to have dismissed and forgotten about Will Benson. We'll talk about him a little bit later in the show. Also coming up here in just a few minutes, we are going to take a look at the Reds bench players, because if you caught yesterday's show, and if you haven't, jump back there, it'll be the one right before this one in your feed. We talked about what the lineup would look like if opening day was right now. And we decided it wasn't too bad. It needed a little bit more, but it wasn't too bad. The bench is a different story. We're going to get into that here in just a few minutes. There's a lot more questions than there are answers. And where we are going to start today is with catcher number one. It's with Tyler Stephenson, because you look at one little piece of information, you look at two little pieces of information, and maybe you think, they could maybe trade Tyler Stephenson. I don't know. That doesn't seem likely. But when you start to look at the big picture, when you take a step back and you look at all that's gone on with Tyler Stephenson from the beginning of last season through right now, it seems pretty evident that there is a possibility that Tyler Stephenson could be moved. And that's where we're going to start today on today's show, Jeff, because I didn't want to believe it. He's the one guy that I said, if the Reds just kept him through the end of his contract and let him walk away as a free agent and didn't get anything for him in return, I would be okay with that because of what kind of an offensive catcher he is in this lineup. I would be okay with that. But maybe the Reds aren't okay with that, because there are a lot of things pointing to maybe they don't have him in the plans for 2026.
Yeah, we're seeing these different signs. This isn't us saying like we want this to happen or the Reds should do this. This is something we talk about a lot during the offseason, where we're just like, the Reds should sign Eugenio Suarez. In this case, I think if you were to ask us, should the Reds trade Tyler Stephenson, I think both of us would say no. But when you consider all of the variables that are coming into play this offseason, it almost seems as though they are planning for this to happen. There are multiple things. I mean, there was the late scratch from Reds Fest reports that
go back farther than that. Let's go back into last season. Last offseason, Tyler Stephenson was approached with a contract extension that by all accounts, his reaction was laughing at it.
Yeah.
It was so bad that he didn't even bother to engage in negotiations or counter. He just said, no, thank you, and went into the season. So that was the Reds' approach to trying to extend Tyler Stephenson. Now, we go through the 2025 season. We all know how that went. He was good at times. He was not good at times. Didn't quite fulfill the expectation that we all had for him. We get into this offseason. We initially see Tyler Stephenson on the list of players that are going to attend Reds Fest right up until 2 weeks before Reds Fest actually happened.
One week.
You're right. And then we get to Reds Fest. Go ahead.
And he wasn't there. He was a late scratch. I think he was marked off of the roster like the day or two before, whenever there was a final update. And there were some unconfirmed reports of people who saw him going through the airport and all this other stuff. But then there's this other factor, and it's not necessarily a factor that we marked whenever it happened, but the Cincinnati Reds claimed Ben Rortvedt from the Los Angeles Dodgers earlier on in the offseason. Now, you might say, Jeff, They claim a lot of people during the offseason. There's a lot of folks that they just throw into spring training because they need a lot of catchers, because not everybody can catch every day during spring training. And I always would agree with you. In fact, most cases, I'd be the one telling you that. In this case, I'm looking at the fact that he's getting paid major league money, $1.25 million. It's nothing crazy, but it's $1.25 million. He is added to a position group that vastly outweighs the entire outfield, so much as it costs when you're talking about Tyler Stephenson, Jose Trevino, and Ben Rortvedt. And the thing that we talk about a lot whenever you're compiling an opening day roster, he has 0 minor league options. So if they decide that he is not on the opening day roster, they have to place him on waivers, and somebody else will probably claim him. I think if you put all of this together, Steve, this makes it feel as though they have laid the groundwork for what comes next after you trade your starting catcher.
Yeah, because if you circle back to Reds Fest, Jose Trevino was front and center. He was featured in the season ticket holders Q&A. He was all over the convention center floor at different various booths. He was in the Q&As on the main stage. Jose Trevino was front and center. So much so, during the season ticket Q&A, Terry Francona pointed directly at him and said, this guy's going to be a major league manager one day. They were really hyping up Jose Trevino. Also, Ben Rortvedt was at Reds Fest in booths doing autographs, taking pictures. They had him rolled out there as well,
which you don't do for a alternate spring training,
a guy that's not going to make the team. And if we're being honest, we have said we don't always agree with what this Reds front office does. We don't always agree with how things are handled. But Nick Krall, for several seasons now, has looked into cameras and told us what he was going to do, and he did that thing. And what Nick Krall has said from day one, from jump, is that if we cannot extend players, if they are not going to be under contract, the idea to keep things sustainable and win in Cincinnati is to churn this roster and trade guys away and reload. Tyler Stephenson has exactly 1 year, 1 season of team control left, the 2026 baseball season. If we're following that philosophy, the Tampa model that Nick Krall is hugging up there at Great American Ballpark, it's time to trade Tyler Stephenson.
I've not seen a word of more contract negotiations between the Reds and Stephenson. I've not seen any smoke in that direction. So for me, I have to agree with what we are seeing here. This is not a matter of preference. This is if you disagree with all of this, I think at this point you'd have to be sticking your head in the sand. It's not a case of it seems very faint and you guys are connecting dots. Like, this all seems very planned and very carefully set up. Now, you might debate the merits of going to a catching tandem of Jose Trevino and Ben Rortvedt as opposed to Tyler Stephenson and Jose Trevino. And you would be fair to do so, because obviously that tandem is not going to hit. But Steve, this franchise, since the retirement of Johnny Bench, for the most part, has gone defense first to catcher. There are very few exceptions to that rule. And you can name a lot of different guys over the last 30 years, and the first thing you think of with pretty much all of them is defense first. I mean, I might say Javier Valentin, you're like, well, he had that 1 home run on opening day. That notwithstanding, he really wasn't a hitting catcher. There was a lot of different guys. Ryan Hannigan comes to mind when I'm thinking of guys like this. Even Tucker Barnhart, you could argue, was a glove first guy that ran into some every so often. So I think that when the Reds look at this position, they are okay with going glove first. And so that is why everything that is set up right here, the way that the Reds have it, looks like they just got the room ready for when they take Tyler Stephenson out.
Let's talk about what the difference would be. It may surprise you to learn, it may not surprise you to learn, that Tyler Stephenson and Jose Trevino in the 2025 baseball season, Tyler Stephenson had exactly 40 more plate appearances than Jose Trevino over the course of the year. During that time, Tyler Stephenson had an OPS plus of 98. He was 2% below league average. Jose Trevino had an OPS plus of 68. Big drop off. If you're going to look at wins above replacement, Tyler Stephenson was 1.5 better in WAR than Jose Trevino. Jose Trevino at a negative 0.2. Tyler Stephenson at 1.3. So it is a marked difference in offensive production between these two catchers. But you're right. They have gone defense first.
And just in case you're wondering, Ben Rortvedt had a slash line of 152, 240, 205, and 128 plate appearances last season.
Ugh.
Hope that glove's really good because
boy.
It just all of this. We're putting this all together. We are looking at this and saying this is what it looks like is about to happen. So get ready. The other part about this, Steve, is really born of the fact that we were looking at the bench of the Cincinnati Reds, and the bench is in a bad way. So much so that a guy who I think most people would say probably should start the year in Louisville will absolutely be on the opening day roster.
Let's be real. Managing your finances can feel overwhelming. Between subscriptions you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all your money actually goes each month, it's easy to feel like you're losing control. And who has time to track every transaction or hunt down hidden fees? That's where Rocket Money comes in, the personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. I love Rocket Money. I love how it tracks all my subscriptions and lets me cancel them right in the app with just a few taps. No more hunting down customer service numbers. And their automatic transaction categorization tool is a game changer. Let Rocket Money help you and your financial goals become a reality. Join at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon.
Thank you for making Locked On Reds your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a notch and go ad-free with the Everydayer Club. Join the Everydayer Club at the link you got down in the description of today's episode, or you can go to lockedonreds.supercast.com and join today. It's just $5 a month or $50 for the whole year. You get an ad-free audio podcast feed, and you join the members only Discord, and so much more. Check the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, Steve, we had a good discussion yesterday on the show. And again, as we mentioned, it's the show that is right before this one in your feed, whether audio or video or whatever. And we talked a lot about the opening day roster, whether it be lineup, starting pitching, bullpen. Didn't get a chance to dive into the bench. And quite frankly, if there is a position group or a group of players in general to be deeply concerned about, it is the bench. Because when it comes to where the Reds are in the lineup, it's clear they need one more move. But that one more move might also be good if they look at it and helping out the bench. Because as it stands right now, Steve, I find a hard discussion to have that the Reds don't have Christian Encarnacion-Strand on the opening day roster because of how bad this bench looks.
It's pretty bleak, Jeff. You look around this 40-man active roster, and let's talk about the infielders. There are 8 guys on the current 40-man roster for the Cincinnati Reds. Of those 8, a bunch of them are starters. Sal Stewart's going to start, Spencer Steer, Matt McClain, Key Brian Hayes, Ellie De La Cruz. Those guys are all going to start. Who's left? Well, Christian Encarnacion-Strand, Leo Balcazar, and Edwin Arroyo. So 2 of those 3 guys have 0 major league experience and don't look for them to get any major league experience, at least not early in 2026. That leaves us with CES. When we last saw CES, just a little refresher for everybody. He was playing in Cincinnati for just a little hot minute, 36 games, 137 plate appearances, slash line of 208, 234, 377, 6 home runs, and looked terrible. Got sent down to AAA Louisville, where he went on to be never seen or heard from again, playing 62 games. Now, You ask yourself, well, that's a lot of time down at AAA. He must have crushed it, right? He went down to AAA. You judge for yourself. 245, 310, 493, 11 home runs in 62 games at AAA Louisville. I don't think that is a barn burning stat line, folks. I feel like he went down there and was pretty meh.
And what you laid out is perfect, because I feel like us saying Christian Encarnacion-Strand on the bench sounds low risk. And we're talking about a guy that we have lauded his scouting report for years as a guy who could be a game changer for this team, potential cleanup hitter, kind of guy that could hit a ton of bombs at Great American Ballpark. Problem is, he swings at everything. If it comes plateward, he's swinging at it. And the Reds thought so highly of how he was playing in AAA, Steve, that the last we saw him in Cincinnati was July the 8th. We had just got done celebrating our nation's birthday, and that's the last time we saw Christian Encarnacion-Strand in Cincinnati. Didn't get another sniff of a major league pitcher. And so when it comes to having him on the bench, it is a microcosm for where we're at. This is why we still think that it's highly likely that they trade Tyler Stephenson, because if they don't, that means that one of the early moves that they make in the offseason to claim Ben Rortvedt, they must then put on waivers if they're going to send him down to AAA. And if he passes through waivers, then he can get sent to AAA. But you have to take him off the 40-man roster, all this other stuff. Likely he gets claimed. But if that doesn't happen, even still, say the Reds don't trade Tyler Stephenson for whatever reason, are they really going to keep 3 catchers when you only have a limited number of bench spots? Like on opening day, it's very likely they face a right-handed pitcher. Statistics show that over 2/3 of the time that happens. So that means that Dane Myers is on the bench. Period, plain and simple. There's not a chance outside of injury that Dane Myers doesn't make the opening day roster. Then you've also got whoever makes it between JJ Bleday and Will Benson, who's going to start. Are you going to keep the other one of those guys on the bench? Because then if you do, that's half your bench right there, 2 outfielders. And then you've got at least Jose Trevino, maybe even Ben Rortvedt. So then you can't keep 2 outfielders. You have to keep at least 1 infielder. And then it's Christian Encarnacion-Strand, whose versatility is almost nil. He plays 2 corner infield spots and one of them poorly. So I really feel like they are in a situation where one of the guys who they signed to a minor league deal with a spring training invite might actually be taken seriously. And yes, I'm talking about Garrett Hampson.
Let's not do that. Let's not have Santiago Espinal light on this lineup. I can't even wrap my head around that. Clearly there's a lot more work to be done on this bench. There has to be a bigger plan than this. You keep looking back at this 40-man roster, and I can't see it. Either they go and get a Garrett Hampson and he's on this team. Christian Encarnacion-Strand is on this team. You're going to carry 8 outfielders in order to fill out this bench. I don't know. It just, you look around the 40-man roster and there's just not a lot of moves to be made. If they go get somebody, Jeff, let's say they don't trade Ty Steve and they have to go get somebody. Now you're tasked with, well, who are you going to drop off of this 40-man roster? Could it be Rortvedt? Maybe. You get into this outfield group. Is it Reese Hines? Is it Tyler Callahan? Or one of those guys going to be exposed to waivers and possibly picked off to another team? I just don't know. It looks like a mess. And Nick Krall has spent exactly 0 time talking about it all throughout this offseason. He has not talked about this at all. And it's starting to get to the point, we're screaming towards February here, folks. Pitchers and catchers report in just a couple weeks. It's time to get this fixed. And Nick Krall has said boo about it.
Is Tyler Callahan the answer? Because he played second base last year. In his 4 games that he played in the majors. Look, I get it. His injury was horrific, but we're talking about a dude that had 6 at-bats last year. So to say that is the answer and you feel good about it, I don't. I certainly don't. And
I don't feel good about anybody on this 40-man roster that's not penciled in as a starter right now. There is nobody that gives me warm and fuzzies.
Only bench guy I feel good about is Jose Trevino and Dane Myers. That's it. Those guys are locks. The problem is you got to have some backup infielders somewhere, and they don't. If it's Leo Balcazar or if it's Edwin Arroyo, major question marks because they've never played a major league game. If it's Tyler Callahan, congrats, he's played 4 more major league games than those guys have. And if it's CES, well, then he can't play the middle infield. So who plays the middle infield there? And maybe the answer is, well, Sal Stewart can play second base, and then whatever. It just feels like it's a whole lot of like, I got to squint really hard to see what the plan is, which means there ain't no plan.
Well, I know this, Jeff. We've talked about the bench. There will be one guy that's probably part-time bench player, part-time starter for the Reds in 2026, but he has been the forgotten man. Nobody is talking about him. Nobody is hyping him, really, except for you. We're talking Will Benson coming up next. If you can't watch us here on YouTube, you can listen to us on pretty much every single audio podcasting feed out there. We're on, I think, all of them at this point. If you find one we're not on, you need us to be on it, message Jeff. He can probably make it happen for you. All right, Jeff, let's get into the Will Benson talk because I'm curious where you're going to go with this. I don't know that Will Benson is even a lock to make this team because he's basically the same guy as JJ Bleday.
Right.
They went out and got JJ Bleday and have talked about JJ Bleday and have some plans for JJ Bleday. And nobody's talking about Will Benson. He may find himself down in Louisville, touring the nearest distillery on his off day.
And that's why I really wanted to look deeper into him, because I feel like Will Benson is going to be the kind of guy that could provide value. There's always 1 or 2 guys. It's usually not a lot. I'm not going to say there's a regiment of just completely forgotten men who all of a sudden show up and provide a ton of value for the Cincinnati Reds, but there's usually 1 or 2 guys who nobody's expecting to do anything. In fact, you might be expecting the opposite. Will Benson's a perfect example because the way that his year ended last year just screamed, this guy's playing elsewhere next year. Because when you get pulled with 2 strikes in a playoff game for a platoon advantage, I know that he is under team control and he has no say about this, but I would be packing my bags because that just feels like you have absolutely not earned any amount of confidence from your manager. But then he's tendered a contract. He signs that contract. He's getting paid by the Cincinnati Reds one way or another next year. And so that surprised me in and of itself. I thought he was going to be a non-tender guy. Is he going to be part of a trade package? I don't see how that happens. You could potentially sell a team on what I'm about to say, but you're not going to get anything of value for it. You might get a cup of coffee guy from like the Dominican Summer League or something, but it's not going to be a prospect. It's going to be a super project or something like that. So all that being said, I think that there's an opportunity for him here to really go crazy because we're talking about a guy whose contact quality was off the charts last year. Hard hit percentage above 50%. He had an average exit velocity around Ellie De La Cruz level. The thing about it was he didn't play as much as Ellie, so it didn't count as far as like measuring on the rankings and things like that. But we're talking about a dude who hit the ball really hard. And I know that there have been some folks this offseason talk about why aren't we paying more attention to Will Benson? It's because the team's telling us not to. But I think he is going to be the one to turn the heads.
You might be right. I mean, if we're being fair, if we're being honest, Will Benson in 2025 was 2 WAR better than he was in 2024. Now, don't go losing your mind because he went from negative 1.4 to positive 0.6. But it was
glad you can do the negatives. I can't do negatives on the math. So I'm glad you did.
Swing, Jeff Carr, 2 WAR swing. Also, he was 12% better if you're looking at OPS plus. He went from 76 in 2024 to 88 in 2025. There was improvement. He got better from 2024 to 2025. If there's anybody that's not in this starting group that has even a hint, a whiff, a sniff of potential to be better, to be a surprise, to be something useful in 2026 that, God help us, can come off this bench, it's going to have to be Will Benson. And that's an indictment to what Nick Krall has done to get some bench players around here between the end of last year and now. like I said, Nick Krall hasn't said boo about this. He hasn't talked about it. Will Benson is your great hope right now to have somebody meaningful that can come into a game off the bench and do some damage.
Well, and you know what else he is? He is the perfect narrative type player that the Reds look for. He's a guy that had a really good year. Okay, not really good, but he had a okay year a couple of years ago where he slugged 498 and he hit 275 and he got on base almost 37% of the time. 365 was his on base percentage that year. And again, it was in limited playing time, so it's not as if it was a full season or anything like that.
Not that limited. He played in 108 games and had an OPS plus of 128. He was 28% better than league average in over 100 games. He contributed.
We can remember multiple points in that season where Will Benson made an impact. And so for me, that's the type of guy that if he were a free agent, Nick Krall would be like, here's $1 million, and I'm going to give a little press conference where we're talking about a lot of upside here, not anybody that we're handing the keys of the franchise to, but he's got a chance to kind of get back to what he did a few years ago. Steve, that's exactly what he said about JJ Bleday. And so that's the thing for me. When we're looking at these two guys, like it seems as though the Reds went and got a replacement for Will Benson, whose exact resume is Will Benson's.
Yeah, it's if you did your blind comparison A and B, you would be hard pressed to figure out which one's which. I really think, if we hadn't given all those stats right now and just did it, I don't think people would be able to tell on the fly which guy was which. But the thing of this is, though, both of those guys are probably on this team unless there's some kind of big move. Both of those guys are going to be playing. And the question is, how do you interchange those guys who are both clearly platoon guys? How do you do that? Are you sitting Noel V. Marte against right-handed? No. Are you using one of them as a DH? Right. So, and are you really going to sit Sal Stewart down and play one of JJ Bleday and Will Benson? I don't know. I don't see that as a possibility. So I am starting to wonder if there's any kind of real strategy or thought that has been given to the bench of this team since the season ended last year, because it certainly doesn't feel like it.
Now, and Will Benson does have options. So if he doesn't make the opening day roster, he'll be in Louisville. So that's worth noting as well. But yeah, like I'm with you at this point. How do you keep him off the bench when you're just like, we need somebody who can come off the bench and give us an impact at bat? If it's not Will Benson, who is it? Because that dude has shown he can swing the bat and he can hit him as hard as anybody else can. Might as well be him off the bench. But we're talking about 4 spots. You get 4 spots because you get 13 position players, 13 pitchers. And it feels like one of those is Jose Trevino. One of those is Dane Myers. So you got 2 spots. You got no infielders on the bench right now. So it's going to be.
And you got to be looking for a right-hander, right? I mean, you have to be looking for a right-hander at this point.
Yeah, it has to. Yeah,
because it has to be a right-hander. So my real question, I guess, my thought is, Jeff, when was the last time you were in the batting cage? Because it might be you. Oh, well, see, me and you both. So it's not going to be us. I wonder if Tim Daniel is right-handed. Is he right-handed? I think he is. Maybe we get Tim Daniel down there. He can pinch hit and do the postcast from the dugout. It'll be great.
But that's kind of been the point of this entire episode, is that, man, when you look at this bench, you got to squint real hard to see whatever plan might be in place. And I don't see one at all. And that's why I'm kind of at a loss. Like, it feels like it has to be Christian Encarnacion-Strand. But then when you're like, okay, how does that work defensively? Yeah. That's what I'm thinking.
Hope.
So
it's going to come down to 2026 MVP hope.
This might be more so going to, or more of going to Menards and getting some sort of cheap thermostat thing.
Buddy, they have worn out the clearance bin, buddy. They have worn it out. And that is where we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for today. Thanks as always for making Locked On Reds your first listen each and every day. We appreciate you so much. Make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On Reds on all the social medias so you get updates on all of our latest episodes. You can follow me on Twitter X at @SOffenbaker with 2 Fs. You can follow Jeff at Jeff Carr. That's Jeff with 3 Fs. You can follow the show at Locked On Reds. For those of you listening on the audio feed, go make Locked On MLB your second listen. Sully's doing great work over there covering Major League Baseball from a national perspective. If you're on the video on the YouTube here, folks, we're going to send you over to the first ever 24/7 national Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. It's always running something good over there with all of the experts from the Locked On Network to keep you informed of all the goings on in all of the sports. Until next time, we will keep you locked on Reds every single day.
The bench conundrum sounds like one of those courtroom dramas that like a comedy actor stars in just to show that he can do more than
like
comedy.
John LaRoquette is going to be in it, but in a serious role.